China has announced it will impose additional tariffs of 34% on all US goods from April the 10th. The country's finance ministry says the levies are countermeasures to the sweeping tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. China's customs have also imposed an immediate suspension on imports of grains and poultry from America. Beijing says it has imposed additional controls on exports of medium and heavy rare earth minerals to the United States. Those extra restrictions will take effect from April the 4th. Beijing have also added 16 US entities to its exports control list and a further 11 firms to its unreliable entities list, claiming the targeted companies seriously undermined China's national sovereignty, security and development interests. Ed Conway has more.
Yeah, I think if you were in any doubt that we are now in the midst, engaged in a trade war rather than just talking about the potential of one in the future, then that has been dispelled. Perhaps today, but perhaps a couple of days ago when we heard from Donald Trump in the White House. The fact that China has retaliated with these tariffs, which are designed to be precisely the same level as the tariffs, the extra tariffs that America has put on China. Worth saying, those tariffs that Donald Trump just added to China and obviously other countries around the world, these so-called reciprocal tariffs, they were on top of an existing 10 and then 20% extra tariffs on China. So the total amount of extra tariffs that China is facing are now kind of up in the kind of 50% level. The fact that China is retaliating really kind of underlines that we are now seeing this tit-for-tat trade war around the world with tariffs, these incredibly potentially damaging taxes being levied on all goods that are being imported into these countries. It is, for most economists, for most investors, for most businesses who look at what's going on in the world, a very scary time. And I think that's what's borne out. You know, the moment that we got that news about China imposing those retaliatory tariffs, you saw markets, and when I say markets mostly in Europe at the moment because those are the ones that are open and trading, but also futures markets for the US falling sharply. And they've already had sharp falls after that Rose Garden event, down by about 3.5% immediately after that announcement. And this is people reacting to the fact that many of their worst fears about the notion of a trade war are actually coming true. It's actually happening right now. And obviously, you know, the best case scenario I think that a lot of people are still clinging to is that this is all just the beginning of a long period of negotiation, that China's going hard, that America's going hard, and eventually they'll negotiate and we'll end up with something where goods can get from one side of the world to another relatively cheaply. But in the short run, this spells a lot of pain, because in order to get to that point, you've got these trade barriers being lifted around the world. If these trade barriers are left in place for a long period of time, then essentially it means it just gets much more expensive to move stuff around the world. And to some extent, you know, that is the long-term plan for the White House. This is all about this fact that so much of the goods, the manufacturing that used to happen in America now happens in China and Vietnam and Cambodia. And they make a reasonable point. How can you compete with a country like China, which to some extent subsidizes so much of its production, both in visible and in invisible ways? So a lot of people, you know, paradoxically, although they're finding this difficult here in the UK, finding it difficult in parts of Europe, they'll be looking at what Donald Trump is doing and saying, well, we can kind of see your point. The challenge is, it is a very destructive way of trying to get to that, and no one is entirely sure whether you're going to have that success about bringing back manufacturing. In the short run, economists are looking at this in dismay, and they are slashing their economic growth forecasts. We see, you know, with every minute or almost that goes by, we're getting new emails slashing forecasts for the UK, for the US, for other economies around the world, raising inflation forecasts, all of which is very painful indeed.
Well, those tariff announcements have also led to a slump on international stock markets. America suffered its biggest one-day loss on the Dow Jones Index since the early months of the COVID pandemic.
A new dawn at the White House as the enormity of the economic storm unleashed from here dawned on countries globally. You can be sure that the Wall Street bell would have been ringing on screens inside here. All eyes on New York Stock Exchange for the market reaction to President Trump's tariff announcements. They opened low and fell further behind the mandatory smiles trillions of dollars wiped off the stock markets. An irony that it happened to be Donald Trump's old pal, lawyer and loyalist Rudy Giuliani, part of the group to ring today's bell. From the president as he left for Florida, a new analogy to describe his deeply risky, controversial plan.
I think it's going very well. It was an operation, like when a patient gets operated on, and it's a big thing. I said this would exactly be the way it is. We have $6 or $7 trillion coming into our country, and we've never seen anything like it. The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom, and the rest of the world wants to see, is there any way they can make a deal?
Of course, operations don't come without pain.
So what does the UK need to do to avoid these tariffs? Is it possible to avoid them?
Well, I think a lot of UK companies could start building factories here.
And on the airwaves, his team were bombarded with the obvious questions.
In a few days, we're about to see prices go up at the grocery store. What do you say to those Americans?
I don't think that's going to happen.
You don't
the reason
think,
it's going to happen,
it won't happen?
watch, no one can guarantee anything.
From the entire administration, there is a display of confidence, holding the line against the aghast and against the retaliation which will come. But the bullishness of Trump's team is increasing the angst, some wondering if the president is even willing to find any middle ground.
I'd like to see the chart if you have it. Great.
A day earlier, his big reveal had caused a global shock.
China, first row. China, European Union, they're very tough. Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia. Oh, look at Cambodia, 97%. United Kingdom, 10%. And we'll go 10%.
It was a set-piece event for the ages. An historic day, he believes, will kickstart an American revival, but at what cost?
The global economy will massively suffer.
The decision announced last night is brutal and unfounded.
We see no justification for this.
The recent tariff decision by the US president is fundamentally wrong.
It will only highlight the unilateralism, protectionism and bullying natures of the US measures.
We don't understand how that number has been calculated.
There is indeed huge skepticism about the White House arithmetic, how they calculated all this. But it is what it is from a president calling the shots and determined to go his way. We'll see now how he responds to retaliation from some and negotiation from others. Mark Stone, Sky News in Washington.